Welcome everyone. Oh, hey. There we go. Welcome everyone to today's Friday Forum. I'm Casey Emlin. I'm the program director here who's responsible for Friday Forum, and it's my job to thank you all for coming. Today's Friday Forum talk, entitled From Structural Adjustment to Post-Washington Consensus and Beyond, Paradigm Shifts in Global Development. I read that sentence wrong. Forgive me. That's today's talk. Before introducing today's speaker, I just wanted to give you some announcements about upcoming events at the Y. We currently have tickets on sale for the 29th Annual International Dinner. Those tickets are $8. You get food from over 20 different countries. We'll have food from over 40 different countries, as well as about an hour and a half of cultural performances. It's a pretty cool event. It occurs March 11th at 6 p.m. If you're interested, you can buy tickets or get more information at the front desk. I'd also encourage you all, as you're walking out, to pick up information on upcoming Friday Forums. This is a weekly series, and we, in particular, next week's Friday Forum, Professor Winters and next week's speaker have sort of made their talks coincide, so I would greatly encourage you to check out that. The back of our series brochures lists campus and community organizations that have joined the Y, McKinley Foundation, First Mennonite Church, Wesley Foundation, and the Episcopal Church Foundation in financially sponsoring this program, and we'd like to thank all of those groups for their consistent support. If at any time you need a sign language interpreter for any event at the Y, just give us a couple of days notice and you can inquire about that at the front desk, and we're happy to oblige. We do rebroadcast Friday Forum on both WEF 90.1 community radio as well as Urbana Public Television, and in some cases, and hopefully in this case if our technology works with us, on YouTube. So if you ever miss a Friday Forum and you want to check one out, you have many different options. For more information on these rebroadcasts, please visit universityymca.org. After the speaker's presentation, we will hold a question and answer period. I will walk around with this remote microphone. Please wait until I bring you the microphone to ask your question. We want to make sure that we get you on the air, and we want to make sure that Professor Winters can hear you. If you need to at any time discreetly slip out, please feel free to do so. And at this point, it is my pleasure to introduce today's speaker. Professor Matthew Winters received his PhD from Columbia University in political science in the Eigert Program in International Development and Globalization. Before coming to the University of Illinois, he was a postdoctoral research fellow at Princeton University's Nyhouse Center for Globalization and Governance, and he has been with the University of Illinois Political Science Department since fall 2009. He's also a faculty member with East Asian and Pacific Studies and affiliated faculty with the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies. And please help me in welcoming him today.
Great. Thanks very much, Casey, and thanks to all of you for coming. As Casey just mentioned, Ashwini Chatra, a good friend from geography, is going to be here next Friday, and he'll tell you that everything I tell you today is irrelevant. So if you don't want to pay that much attention, that's okay, and then he'll tell you the really important stuff, which is to say he's going to talk less about development aid and more about some of the other financial flows that are going to the developing world, which may be much more important than development aid is going forward when we think about issues of global poverty alleviation or economic development in the poor countries of the world. But I study those things. I study foreign aid, and so that's mostly what I'm going to talk about today. My goal is to provide you a sense of where the development community is today in terms of thinking about how to do development, how to bring about positive developmental outcomes in the poor countries of the world. And I want to do that by thinking about the ideology that motivates people within the development community, and by going back historically to think about what that ideology has been in the past. So there was a fairly dominant development ideology in the 1980s and the first half of the 1990s that's sometimes referred to as the Washington Consensus. So that's what you see up there. If you don't know what that is, I will go through it with some caveats on the way that the term is sometimes used versus what it actually was meant to mean. And I think that there are three main focuses of the post Washington Consensus development ideology, and so I want to reveal those to you by the end of the talk. The first is a focus on institutions in good governance. The second is a renewed focus on poverty alleviation, something that disappeared during the Washington Consensus years. And then the third is an ostensible commitment to country ownership of development programs. And I emphasize ostensible because it's really not clear the extent to which the development industry is really embracing what it's giving lip service to. So if we can go way back in time and talk about the history of foreign aid, the first instance that we have recorded of any sort of foreign aid is from 226 BC, when the earthquake struck Rhodes, toppling the Colossus at Rhodes. And under the leadership of Ptolemy II of Egypt, a number of the city-states and countries around the Mediterranean put together some humanitarian relief supplies to send to Rhodes. We had isolated other instances of like that through history, but it's not really until after the First World War where we see large-scale transfers of financing from countries to other countries in order to deal with particular development or humanitarian issues. So following the First World War, there are aid flows to help refugee populations located throughout Europe. And to prevent famine in the USSR, the same countries that had staged this minor intervention to try and stop the Bolshevik Revolution, that is the United States and the United Kingdom, when famine breaks out in the new USSR, they're willing to send government-sponsored humanitarian relief to that country. In the 1920s, we're still in the age of colonialism, and some of the colonial powers decide that colonies perhaps do not have the resources to be self-sufficient, and so they look for ways to transfer resources from the metropoles to those colonies. And then in the 1940s, we begin to get towards something that is what the modern foreign aid world looks like, where the United States begins sponsoring technical assistance programs in Latin America. And technical assistance is an attempt to transfer technological knowledge, knowledge about production, knowledge to a certain extent about government to countries and to industries in the developing world and the poor countries of the world. But the birth of modern aid giving, of modern foreign aid, really comes with the end of the Second World War, where aid is given for recovery, it's given for the purposes of decolonization, it's given quite clearly for the purposes of fighting the Cold War, that is, sponsoring friends and allies and trying to persuade countries to become friends and allies through monetary leverage. And finally, for the purpose of development. In 1944, the Allied powers get together and they create the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, better known today as the World Bank. Its original intent is to rebuild Europe, to reconstruct Europe, but along comes 2 bullet points down, the Marshall Plan, which preempts that focus for the World Bank, and so the bank starts to think much more about what's going on in the